Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is Kristen with Monarch Plans, and today I wanted to walk through how I am kind of revamping my budget planner for the rest of 2020. So I've been using the Erin Condren Deluxe monthly planner, so it just has like the line pages after the monthly page. So I've been using that as my budget planner for pretty much the past, I'd say like 9 or 10 months. And it's been okay. It's worked relatively well for me in terms of being able to track my budget. But I recently realized that I needed to make some updates to the kind of the formatting and all of that stuff of my little budget kits that I usually make. And I'm hoping this helps some people maybe feel empowered to revamp their budgets or something like that, because what I found was when I first kind of got into the planner community, I followed some people that made budget kits. And there's a lot of people out there that make budget kits for planners and specifically for the Deluxe monthly planner. And so I looked at their system for budgeting and realized or thought that their system was going to work for me. And so I've kind of been essentially using the same format that they do and almost trying to force myself into what they do, thinking it would work for me. And I realized it just wasn't working. So let me go through what I've been doing, and then I'll walk through my new setup for May. We'll just walk through April really quickly, and I'll show you kind of how things have been looking. And then I can go through what has worked and what hasn't and kind of explain why I'm making changes. So the monthly layout is really just an overview of the different kind of like payment due dates and everything. I have different colored labels that I've made for like debt payments, for utilities, for car related stuff, you know, a bunch of different stuff. So I usually put the bigger due dates on here, things that aren't automatic payments. So I'll usually either put them on here or I'll make a list on the side. The notes section, really, I just use it for any type of notes. For this month, it was listing out all the kind of inflow that we were going to be getting. Not just like the stimulus payments, but it was my fiance's birthday, so he was getting money from his grandpa. I was getting a big refund from like an online store because I bought a bunch of dresses to potentially wear as like an elopement wedding dress that I ended up returning, so that was a lot. And then I made a note that my student loan payment is deferred for 6 months. So I have the choice to either pay it, you know, as normal or keep that money, put it into an emergency fund, all that. So I essentially just use this as an overview. When I pay the payment, I'll check it off. You can see the little check boxes. So that's why I've been using this page. That has worked for me. So this is going to stay the same. The next page, on the other hand, this has worked pretty well for me. So I have a weekly check-in and an April budget. And I mainly kind of got this from Sarah Marie. If you've seen her YouTube channel, she does her check-ins and budget and all that stuff. And she sells some budget stickers. She was one of them where I watched her channel. I was like, oh, you know, that would really, really work for me. So I really liked her format and everything when I first started budgeting. So that's kind of what I tried to do. I made some updates for myself on mostly the next couple pages, but I kind of looked at hers and really, really liked those and knew that I wanted to kind of do something similar. So that's what this is. These kind of look kind of like her setup, and I'll link her and everything in the description so you can take a look at her videos if you'd like. But this is essentially the layout for my budget. We have our income, we have our variable expenses on this side, our fixed expenses on this side that get totaled up down at the bottom, and then an estimated transfer to savings. On this side, I like to check in with the categories that are kind of the most variable for us. So that's usually groceries, dining out, gas, allowance, and unbudgeted. So that has been working, just keeping an eye on those bigger categories that kind of are easier to overspend on. So ultimately, this has been okay for me. I did make a change a little bit to how I'm listing out my variable expenses in my my new format. What I was finding is that I wasn't necessarily going back and counting like all of my wedding purchases, or any like unbudgeted stuff. So even if it's over here, I was just having a hard time kind of reconciling all my unbudgeted stuff, all my planner stuff, all my allowance stuff. It was just getting really hard. And I think it can be a little bit difficult because I use an app to do my budget. So I use the app, it's called You Need a Budget, and it's abbreviated YNAB, YNAB. And I love that app. Like, it has absolutely changed my finances for the better. So I track everything on there. I budget all of our money on there, but I love having like a paper planner so I can do the check-ins and so I can see things like on paper the way that I like them laid out. So it was getting a little bit hard to like reconcile between the two, but it was mostly just because I hadn't set things up correctly. So what I'm going to do, is just quickly go through the next couple pages, and then I'll show you kind of how I have changed this. This page is staying the same, so nothing is changing for my weekly check-ins, but there's just a really small change for my budget page every month. This next kind of 2 pages, I was dedicating to sinking funds. So I was initially listing out all of our sinking funds on one side, showing how much I was adding at the beginning of the month, and then how much I'm removing or using from each of these, and then showing the balance at the end of the month. And then in order to track how much I'm spending from my sinking funds, I would come over here and I would put the date, the sinking fund, the amount, the purpose, and the new balance. And so I don't have anything written here because I haven't reconciled anything, because I realized at the beginning of April that this wasn't working for me. So I kind of just gave up on this over the past few weeks. So that's why it looks very blank. But I realized that this wasn't really working to track what I wanted it to track, because what ends up happening is we get paid 4 times a month. So every other week, like, I get a paycheck, and then the next week my fiance gets paid on Friday, and then the next week I get paid on Thursday. So there's 4 times a month that I'm budgeting paychecks that we receive. And so there'd be times where I may add $50 to home maintenance, and then, I'll have a little bit extra money that I'd like to put in, to my sinking funds at some point during the month when I receive a paycheck, like on the 3rd week of the month. And I've already written down that I put in $50. So I then would have to white it out, scratch it out, or use a pencil, which I don't particularly want to use my planners. And then put like an additional $30. And so, that could just be something I could fix with like the headings, all that stuff. It was just getting very confusing. So I think I found a little bit better way to keep track of everything, in my new budget planner for the upcoming year. So that being said, this kind of worked for me for the past 6 or 8 months. But it wasn't something that was like, I wouldn't say it was revolutionary in keeping me on track with my finances. It was something where I'd find maybe like halfway through the month, I would just be like, I'm not going to update this or something like that, and kind of just give up on it. But I always have an idea of our finances through that app that I mentioned, that YNAB app. So it's not like I was ignoring our funds or anything like that, or ignoring our budget. It's just the paper budget wasn't a good way for me to accurately represent what our financial situation looked like. So what I'm going to do is show you my new budget. I am using an Erin Condren binder, and it has the Deluxe monthly in it. Sorry, I'm just making sure everything is in the frame. It has the Deluxe monthly inserts in it, and then I just rearranged it so May, so the first couple months of the year were removed, and so it starts with May, since we've already been going through April. But I was able to get this on sale, and I figure I can use the binder and continue using it and just buy new inserts whenever I need a new budget binder. So what I'm going to be doing with this page, as I mentioned, is I will be putting the labels in here, marking due dates for bills and everything. I can put notes similar to what I did in the coiled Deluxe monthly, but I'm going to be keeping track of our debt payments down here on the bottom. So I have any credit cards we have and then student loans. So I'll put in here our total debt payments that we're making for the month. And then that gets moved over into this spread. So like I mentioned, the weekly check-in is all staying the same. There will be 5 weeks in May, or at least how I'm doing it, there will be 5 weeks. I forgot to print a week 5, so I'm printing that out tonight and putting that on. But this is the same as the Coiled Deluxe Monthly I just showed you. This May budget is also very similar to the Coiled, but instead of breaking out sinking funds, unbudgeted spending, and debt payments up here, I put them down here at the bottom, because these are things that I'm going to wait until the end of the month really to even look at. Because as I mentioned, I'll usually put money into sinking funds throughout the entire month. Unbudgeted, obviously, you don't know what you'll spend on unbudgeted stuff throughout the month. And then debt payments, I have debt payments all through the month, and sometimes I'll pay extra randomly at the end of the month if I just see, you know, I can make an extra payment or something. So these will be ones that I look at the end of the month. I have all the same categories in here as I have in YNAB, same as these fixed expenses. These are all also in YNAB. So I'm making them match the app as best as possible. I have a section in my YNAB for sinking funds, so that helps a little bit. I have a line item in my YNAB app for unbudgeted, and then I have a section for debt payments. So that makes it really easy for me to go in at the end of the month and see exactly what I spent in all of these categories. I think it'll make it way easier to reconcile versus my other budget. I was pretty good at the categories, but I was finding I needed to like add stuff randomly, or there was just random things that I would buy. So at this point, I think I have things narrowed down. So I should be good. This first month might take a little bit of, you know, adjusting and everything, but I think this should work to especially look at these, because these were the ones where I was getting really kind of bogged down and didn't really end up looking at them. And, you know, it just ended up not giving me a total picture of my finances. So that's the only small change. Other than that, everything is the same. This is mostly where my plans and my layout has changed. So I'm still having a sheet for sinking funds, but what I did is I broke out, you can see up here on the heading, I broke out the category for the sinking fund, the starting balance at the beginning of the month, and then I have week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5. And that'll stay the same for every month, regardless if there's 5 weeks or not. I'll just put an X through week 5 or something if there's not 5 weeks in the month. But that means that I can go in every week when I get a paycheck, whether it's mine or my fiance's, and put in more money if I would like. So I'm not just stuck with one number. And then I'll be able to see each week, what did I spend or what did I put into my sinking funds? And it makes it a little bit easier to track to see, you know, if there's a certain week where I'm able to put more in, less, none, anything like that. So each week I'll go in and I'll see if I need to add anything to a category or if I can. And then here I have a spending column. So if I spend any money from any of these sinking funds, then I will subtract the amount that I spent, and then I'll have an ending balance for the end of the month, which then I'll move over to the next month's starting balance. Then underneath is where I'm tracking my transactions relating to my sinking funds. So for example, if during the month I put in, you know, 25 bucks into the truck registration line item, and then the truck registration comes due at the end of the month, then I can put the date that I pay it, the sinking fund, which is truck registration, the amount, and then the purpose. I just put that in case there's something that's not very clear. Like for example, self-care and beauty, that's a huge category. So I'll usually put a purpose like, oh, I just bought new makeup, or I bought new makeup brushes, or whatever I need to do. So that means that I can track every week what I want to put into the sinking fund, and then track the total that's coming out based on what's down here. in this section. And this is just sinking fund transactions, which are very easy to track between the YNAB app and the paper, because I do have like a whole section with these categories in my app. So I can easily see if there's any spending, and then we can, put that in this column, show an ending balance, we're good to go. This page I think is going to come in very handy for me, because this is going to be where I track any of the unbudgeted spending that I do. And so that will help me when it comes time at the end of the month to take a look at this unbudgeted line item. So I'm really excited to kind of track all of the different expenses that we spend money on that we weren't even planning. And that's been happening a little bit more recently. My fiance has kind of gotten into like a couple different hobbies recently that he's kind of had some trouble budgeting for, just because he didn't know exactly the stuff he needed and all that stuff. So what I'll be using this page for is to write down any of our unbudgeted spending. And then what I'll use this specifically for is to have like a weekly conversation, or like every other week conversation with my fiance about what we're spending our money on and where we might be able to cut back on unbudgeted spending. So if we see a lot of stuff like spending on Amazon that's not necessary essentially, or if he goes out and buys something for his hobby and I notice that like, hey, you spent like $100 on your hobby in the past couple weeks, like maybe we need to cut back for the next week or so or two, then I can use this and say I have like a running list of all the stuff we're spending our money on that isn't budgeted, that isn't a household bill or groceries or anything like that. So I'm still deciding if I'll put like eating out or dining out on here. I might. I think we'll be cutting back on that a little bit in the coming weeks and months and everything, just because I'm starting to eat a little bit healthier. Things are hopefully going to get back to a little bit more normal, so we would definitely pack our lunches a little bit more. So we'll see about that. But I think this page is going to come in very handy for myself and my fiance going forward. And then it will also help me kind of tie out the entire month and everything. Then when I have an idea of all of the actual spending we've done and the income that we have had come in, then I can estimate our transfer to savings. It could either be a transfer to savings or an extra debt payment. I'm not going to put or change this or anything like that. So that'll just be something where I can calculate that out and see where we're at the end of the month. And if we're able to put some money into savings, that's great. And if we are able to pay off more debt, that's also great. So we'll see. But I'm really, really excited to see how this goes. I think what I'll try to do is I will try to film my check-ins and kind of give you guys an idea of how this is all going for me and how this update has kind of, has it been good? Has it been not good? Is there anything I'd change? So I'll let you guys know, but I'd like to do like a couple check-ins and film them and kind of let you guys know if this is better than it has been in the past few months. And also, I just want to say, like, if you're working on a budget and you realize that it's not actually helping you, don't be afraid to do whatever you need to do that works for your situation. And I think there's so many people, that share their budgets, which is amazing that people are being transparent and open and sharing. But people also look to them and think that their situation or their finances should fit in that same mold that YouTuber or Instagrammer or something should, uses. And that's not the case. And I try to force myself kind of into a certain template and a certain way of doing things for months and realized that it was just a big waste of time for me to be tracking things on paper and not actually getting anywhere. So I really hope that people, can take a look at people, maybe like an influencer's budget and pick and choose the things that really work for you. And then when you are able to do that and you figure out what works, I think that budgeting and finances become a lot easier. It doesn't become as much of a chore when you're trying to figure out how you can fit your life into someone else's kind of template. So hopefully that made sense. I know it was a little bit of a rant, but I'm just really excited for this, and I'm really glad I got it all set up, and I think it is going to help me a lot in terms of keeping track of everything and, just kind of seeing how things play out at the end of the month. So if you have any questions or anything, just feel free to reach out. I'll leave my Instagram handle and everything. That's always a good way to get a hold of me. But you can always leave a comment here and I'll be happy to respond. But again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Okay, bye.